Greetings, Planet Mitch here from lightRumors.co with some exciting news. And we're going to cover a whole lot of stuff today, so this might be a little long, but hopefully you'll sit through the whole thing because we've got some exciting stuff. We have got brand new images from Light over in their gallery, like this one, and they're kind of spread around. But this one over here, and it suddenly dawned on me too, by the way. If you go back to when they switched things around and put this new gallery called Captured by Light, it didn't really dawn on me that these images, where they are in the factory, were actually shot on Light, because it says in this gallery, everything is shot on Light. So, bingo, bango, we're going to go through some of those. One of the most fascinating images in the new bunch is this image on the far left, the Yosemite waterfall and trees, because I was on vacation in that exact same spot, and I can compare my image to their image, and we can see whether the Canon 5D Mark III or the Light L16 wins. No, there is no winning here. It's just a matter of being able to have our very first comparison, although it's still not fair because the lighting is completely different. But stick around to the very end for my comparison of their image to my 5D Mark III image, and we'll see exactly what we see. But before we dive into that, I wanted to show you a couple of quick features. I've changed the layout of lightRumors and implemented a theme. So we have a new feature for videos and also a new feature for news. And in the video showcase underneath that, there's a way to submit a video. Now, this is all planning for the future when cameras start coming out, right? In the videos tab right now, we have gone out and collected a whole bunch of the existing videos from press and from Light and other locations. So if you've ever wanted to go back and see some of the history, we think we've gathered almost all of it right there. And also in the press category, there are all kinds of news stories listed here. Also on this page, you can do add to list. So if you find something cool out there on the planet that's referring to the Light L16, then go ahead and do that and add it to the queue, and I'll come in and validate that so that everybody else can see it. Some additional side notes. One of the things I have is a plugin that will show the latest Flickr images associated with our Light community. And if you notice, there's an eyeball here. Somebody has added an image to the pool that isn't obviously a Light shot image because none of them are out there yet. And you notice that it shows up as a Nikon D7200. So I will be removing that shortly, but that's there. I have also created the Light community over, they call them groups, over on 500px. So if you go to Learn groups, you can do a search there and search on L16, and you will find this. We're also, planning ahead for the future when people start uploading images. And last but not least, let's not forget that we have the Light L16 news group over on Facebook, and you can obviously come over and join that. No charge for any of this, actually. Let's dive into looking at the latest images from Light in Lightroom, because that's the best way to really analyze these things. Okay, there's probably other ways, but this is the one that I know. All right. As a reminder, I am not yet an expert on how Light works. I'm learning just like you, but using programs like Lightroom lets me dive in and do some analysis as opposed to just looking at the pretty picture on the web. In Lightroom, when we're in develop mode, we have the ability to see quite a few things and just play around with the images. So I'm going to start with the ones that they delivered to us that I didn't even really think about as being light images or L16 images from the factory. And I'm going to highlight a couple of things. If you note in the histogram, and histograms are great for looking at what's in the photo and what's not in terms of how much light is there. If you go roll over this or turn this on, you can see in the far upper right corner what's blown out in terms of the whites, and that shows up as a little red thing. I'm going to just leave that on, and you can also do that for the blacks. I'm going to leave that on for right now. So you see in this particular image there is lots of stuff that is blown out, but those are white lights, and we probably really don't care, right? And it's okay to blow out whites when you're capturing images in things that don't really matter. We're gonna get to some other ones coming up pretty soon, and we'll just keep looking at that, because one of the things that's most important to think about with this new camera is the dynamic range. How does it handle the blacks? How does it handle the really bright whites and everything in between? Obviously, if you saw the earlier videos that I've done, I have a set of presets that I like to fool around with. One of them is called this color miracle over here in the upper left. If I click on that, you will see that it does some really major changes to the image itself. I don't always like the look, but sometimes I do. And I still have the black highlights turned on over here in the upper left of the histogram. And so you can see, like in areas like this where that blue is showing up, that some of the blacks are just crushed, as they like to say. But the middle image, you certainly see in the histogram, we certainly have a lot of data in the middle, and it's pretty good. We can fool with all kinds of things. We have latitude, is what I really sort of want to say. So you can try to pull the highlights down. It doesn't really work so well in this image. You can fool with the blacks, of course, if you want. But the more you fool with it, the more you see they just go dark. The good news about this image is that we've got wide tonal ranges here. We've got good color here, and I haven't found any problems in terms of the image tiling that we found with some of the Cuba images. And I have a special video on that if you will come over to lightRumors.co and join us to get on our mailing list, and you can see that video. The last thing to note here is that it appears that everything's in focus, all the way from the foreground way back to the background. So this is like what would traditionally be shot as like an F16 or an F22, or like it's shot on your typical smartphone. At this point, most of the image is in focus, and that's okay because we wanted to see the whole factory. I have not found anything really in this image to really talk a whole lot about. I do note that down here in the bottom part of the image, let me turn on zoom now. Again, these images that they have released are very small. If you look at the image sizing here in Lightroom, it's 2000 by 1497, basically just under 3 megapixels. So looking at these images is a little bit of a torture because we can't really dive in and see all the nuances. But down here in the blacks, in the dark part, if I really go really crazy and go up to 4 times, there's not a whole lot of noise in these blacks, which is really nice. Now again, this is 4 times the original size of the image that we have. So you'll note in many of the images that we talk about the rest of the show here, I don't find a whole lot of noise, and I think that has to do with the computational imaging aspects of the way we're tiling things, and noise kind of ends up being eliminated. Now this image, again, is a lot of tonal range. We don't have any big spikes here in the uppers or the lows, the whites or the blacks. The thing that I found most interesting about this, and I was looking for, again, tiling problems or focus problems in diving into this, and focus appears to be primarily here in the center, upper center of the image on this board, and the front board tends to be a bit blurry. But look at this interesting little detail here. These holes are blurred out. They're out of focus, except for the second row of holes. Those suckers are like sharp as tacks. When I blow this up and come down and look at this, I just find it very fascinating that these holes appear to be like in focus. And again, this is 4 times the original size, but the holes right next to it are not in focus. So, interesting little artifact in this particular image. Now this image has some interesting depth to it because it's got blacks and whites, right? So if I roll over the dark part of the histogram, we see that a lot of the blacks have been crushed, which is okay. Doesn't really show in the image. It doesn't really make us go, ooh, that's really ugly. Now if we dive in a little bit into this image, and I'm going to go blast it with my Color Miracle, we're not looking to say this is a horrible image, because if you look at it just as the original, that's a very appealing, a very pleasing image. The darks are dark, the whites are white, and the stuff that's in the middle looks pretty good. So I've blown it up 4 times just to show this corner, and again, I've found this tiling seam, and does it really matter to the image? No. But it's just an interesting artifact that it appears that this section has not been processed 100% accurately by the light processing engine. But that's okay in this particular image. It's dark, nobody can see it. Scrolling to the other side of the image, we see that we've got some artifacting going on in the dark areas. And we see a little bit of stuff that appears to be trying to be in focus, but it's not. And we've got some color issues going on in here. But again, if you look at the original image, you could just barely maybe see that little bit of blue that's right there. Again, nobody's going to notice this, especially at normal size. And we may be getting some of this just because it's coming out of a tiny 3 megapixel JPEG. So again, I'm not complaining about any of these images in any way, shape, or form. Here's another one of the new images from Yosemite. The only thing that I really found that's wrong with this image is this lower right-hand corner section. If you look at what's going on here, and again, a reminder, this is 4 times the original size, and they only gave us a 3 megapixel image, so we don't have a whole lot to fool with here. But it looks like there's some good focus in the water. You see the ripples are fairly decent until you get down to a section like this area down here. But again, that's towards the foreground. But there's a little blurriness here. And then you look at this log. This log looks pretty deadgum blurry. So in terms of focal plane, you would expect that to be about as in focus as these areas, but it's not. And if I roll up here a little bit, you look at this tree that's in the center of the image. There's a whole lot of out of focus area here, but then bang, this area, the upper section, appears to be much more in focus. Now if I go back to the original size, you're not going to notice that. Nobody's going to see that. Nobody even notices that log here is out of focus. They're looking at the central sections and maybe the clouds. Another new image from Yosemite showing Half Dome in the background and El Capitan on the left. Very famous valley photo area. I love that it's frozen in this particular area. The whites really show up really well. And if I roll over the highlights and the darks, we're not really seeing a whole lot of problems in terms of this particular image being blown out in any direction. Which means, of course, that we could apply our color miracle and see what happens. Of course, that makes it look really tacky down here in the bottom. But again, these images have latitude. It's sharp all the way through, so typical F16 kind of image. Another fully in focus Yosemite image. The foreground is in focus, the background is in focus. We have a good range of tones here. Moving on. Now, of all of the images they have added to the gallery, this is the most intriguing good and bad image in the bunch. The problem with this that most photographers will jump at right away is the fact that this center section, the waterfall, is completely blown out. And if you look at the histogram, you can see that there's a very big white spike in the upper section of the histogram. And so that waterfall is just gone. You're not going to pull out any kind of details in there. Even if I pull down the highlights and pull down the whites, it's still just blah. So the camera was trying to adjust for the lows and the highs, and it ended up blowing out the highs. I'm kind of surprised that Light shows this as part of their gallery, but I think maybe they also want to set some expectations. And interestingly enough, I have actually shot this location. I remember specifically saying to myself, hey, self, you're going to have a devil of a time trying to shoot this because it's really bright on the waterfall and the trees are really dark. And so every photographer that tries to tackle this particular scenario has got to make some compromises because our cameras just don't have the dynamic range that we want them. Somebody would probably shoot this in HDR to get the background, the waterfall, to be something you can see. So since I know I've been there, guess what? I went and found my images. And so different lighting, so this is totally not fair. Not the same scenario, not the same lens, the same location, different time of year, different quality of light. Totally not fair comparison. But it does give you an idea of what compromises you have to make. I remember standing there saying, well, if I want the waterfall, then I have to expose for the waterfall, and trees and darkness be damned. And even so, I think this is a bit overexposed in terms of the waterfall, but I figured I could pull it out, right? This was shot on my Canon 5D Mark III. Now, I've actually exported that as a JPEG and made it approximately the same size. If you look at this, it's 1333 by 2000, and their image is 1440 by 1920. So I was trying to pull it down to be sort of the same easy for me to say, same resolution, so that I could see if there were any differences there. Interestingly enough, that the histogram looks fairly similar except for that white spike, right? So this is their image, and this is my image. Darks, lights. Of course, it's the same sort of location, so you would think the histogram would be kind of the same, right? I just found that fascinating. Now, I also overexposed, and I got a little bit of clipping in the whites here, much like they did. And there's a lot more range in the darks and not so pinned over to the left-hand side of the histogram. But you see more color in the trees, in the trunks of the trees, than we were seeing before in my image. So this was kind of a compromise. And I remember walking away going, these are going to look terrible. Oh, they didn't look that bad. But obviously I've got a blown out situation here with the whites, just like they did. There's a little bit of structure there, but not a whole lot. So in their image, we've got some beautiful colors. We don't know if this is straight out of the camera. If it is, and you compare their colors to my colors, again, totally different time of day. So maybe mine would have been similar if I had used a 5D Mark III in that same situation. And hopefully we get the opportunity soon to do some side-by-side direct comparisons. But this is the first time I've been able to actually look at the same location with the light and with another camera. And so it's giving us a little bit of information that we can compare side by side. So there you have a quick look. Okay, not so quick. I tend to get a little rambly. Quick look at the latest images from Light on their brand new gallery. Keep looking for the light with me over on lightrumors.co. Wishing you the best of luck. And if you happen to be getting a beta, shh, don't tell anybody, but send me an email and we'll talk. But I won't tell anybody that you told me. It's okay, it'll be a secret just between you and me. P.S. I'm really jealous how much more water they had in their waterfall than when I had mine. Totally a better image with more water in it. Much more impressive. Too bad it's blown out. And if you have any analysis that's different than mine, please feel free to teach me in the comments. But be nice, okay? Thanks.